Hello everybody, my name is Courtier bringing us yet another video, and in today's video, we're going over the rest of the fighter subclasses other than Battlemaster, who kind of is going to get their own video. Not exactly their own video, I'm actually going to the usual thing where I kind of showcase what you get at every level of the fighter for the overview of the class itself. I'm actually going to be making a Battlemaster at that point to showcase what the Battlemaster gets and what the fighter itself gets. Why am I giving special treatment to the Battlemaster? Quite simple. I really like it, and I'm extremely biased towards it. So, yeah. My video is my rule, so... But hey, you'll get to see it in a little bit. But for now, what we're going to look at is the Psi Warrior. If you don't remember, just as a real quick recap, Battlemaster at the top, Gunslinger is right here, Champion, Cavalier, Arcane Archer, Eldritch Knight, all in this order. All pretty good subclasses. If you want to see what they actually are all about and why I put them here, again, watch the other video. These two down here are not things. There's no Echo Knight and no Purple Dragon Knight. They seem to might have been replaced by the Psi Warrior and the Roon Knight. Instead, for naming, I don't know if it's also for ability. Probably not, though. I'd have to actually know what they were even all about at that time, because, well, I don't know if for as long as I've been doing it. I mean, there probably was a time when I did see their things pop up in Unearthed Arcana, but that's not what they turned out to be when they were, finalized. So, unfortunately, I don't remember. So, but hey, let's hop into things that we do know for sure are real, like the Psi Warrior, who at level 3 gets Psionic power. You harbor a wellspring of psionic power, psionic, I don't know, within yourself. This energy is represented by your psionic energy dice, which are each a d6. You have a number of these dice equal to twice your proficiency bonus, and they fuel various psionic powers you have, which are detailed below. Some of your powers expend the psionic die they use, as specified in the power's description, and you can't use a power if it requires you to use a die when your dice are all expended. You regain all your expended psionic dice when you finish a long rest. In addition, as a bonus action, you can regain one expended psionic die, but you can't do so again until you finish a shorter long rest. And then when you reach certain levels, they become better die. At 5th level, they're a D8, 11th is a 10, 17th is a 12. So, nice little thing to know that they do get better and better, and you will get more, like a few more, well, actually a good bit more by the time you level up, but it won't be, slowly getting more and more as you level up or anything like that. You'll just get them all, like, multiple in a big chunk. Right off the bat, you'll have 4, and then by the end, you'll have 12. So, right off the bat, what you get is Protective Field. When you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to expend one psionic die, energy die, roll the die, and reduce the damage taken by the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier, minimum reduction of 1, as you create a momentary shield of telekinetic force. So this subclass is basically trying to have your second highest stat would be intelligence. You'd of course focus on strength or dexterity, depending on which one you want to be, which type of one you want to be playing, which type of fighter you want to be, a strength fighter or do you want to be a dex fighter. Either one is perfectly valid. This one is now saying that your secondary thing is you want to be an intelligence, and then you still might want constitution and intelligence to be equal in their things. So for this one, you might want to be a dex based one, so that you can have you can be focusing with your more of your dex related proficiencies, and your weapon will be a bit easier, and your armor might be easy to come by and easy to increase overall in that way. So you might want to be a dex based fighter class with this one, but realistically you'd be rolling probably an average of 3 on a d6. So this is of course starting an average of 3 on the d6, either a 2 or a 3 as your intelligence modifier. So you'd probably be getting around a 5, a 5 or a 6 as your lowering of the damage taken. And note this is reduce the damage taken by the number, so this isn't going to protect your ally from being hit. It just might protect them from taking damage or taking as much damage. So it's a nice little thing right there. Next up, you can also do Psionic Strike. You can propel your weapons with psionic force. Once on each of your turns, immediately after you hit a target within 30 feet of you with an attack and deal damage to it with a weapon, you can expend one psionic energy die, rolling it and dealing force damage to the target equal to the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier. So this one is just a nifty little thing because you're essentially able to do just more damage, which, as I've always said, anytime that you can just get in a little bit of extra damage here and there, it's actually kind of nice. This is basically allowing you to roll, an extra hit die, like an extra damage die. 1d6 lower levels is pretty good, and then an extra d12 at higher levels is pretty good. And also because this is technically a die that you roll, this is something that during a crit will be doubled. So you can actually, if you crit, then this is basically saying, yeah, there's no reason not to be using this one, because then that's just an extra die that you get to roll that is being doubled for extra damage. So it's actually a pretty nice thing. Plus, it's adding your intelligence modifier. It isn't just whatever you're rolling, you also get intelligence on top of that. So, you can always be essentially doing like a minimum of 4 damage, and then potentially, doing more. And of course, I'm still with the hypothetical that your intelligence modifier is a 3, which is basically focusing that you're a Dex, Charisma, and Dex, Constitution, and Dex, Con, and Intelligence focused subclass like in this character in this orient. If you're not playing Strength, I would recommend Dex, because then that can also, because you're getting stuff that is, out of, within 30 feet and, doing stuff in 30 feet, meaning that you could actually use your bow instead of running around needing your sword constantly if you want to be attacking from a distance, and because your bow is, ranged weapons are other than throwing, of course, your ranged weapons are a Dex-based attack and damage, then it is actually kind of smart to be using to be doing a Dex-based range build and then having a Psionic, just because you can keep your distance while getting all these extra little, miscellaneous like pot shot abilities. So it's, how I would play it. Lastly, you get Telekinetic Movement. You can move an object or a creature with your mind. As an action, you target one loose object that is large or smaller, or one willing creature other than yourself. If you can see the target and it is within 30 feet of you, you can move it up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Alternatively, if it's a tiny object, you can move it to or from your hand. Either way, you can move the target horizontally, vertically, or both. Once you take this action, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest, unless you expend a psionic energy die to take it again. So this is basically saying that you get it for free one time, and then every time after that, before a short or long rest, you have to be using a die for it. So just one time being able to use telekinesis is actually kind of fun to do, especially because you get it back at a short rest. So you can just have like a nifty little thing, and it can also help, get allies to higher locations. Just getting one of your friends to like, maybe they're, you have an incapacitated ally that you need to get up somewhere because you guys are climbing to something, so you can help, telekinetically get him up to an area, and then you can continue carrying him normally from there. Just a nifty little thing. At 7th level, you'll get Telekinetic Adept. You have mastered new ways to use your telekinetic abilities detailed below. You get Psi-Powered Leap. As a bonus action, you can propel your body with your mind. You gain a flying speed equal to twice your walking speed until the end of your current turn. Once you take this bonus action, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest, unless you expend a psionic energy die to take it again. So just a one-time thing of being able to fly 60 feet. Yeah, that's actually fairly strong, and this is something that you get back at a short or long rest without using psionic dies for it. So just a one-time fly speed of 60 is actually kind of good, because this is something that can help you get out of combat, can get you to, some nice vantage points, right at the start of combat. You say, you are like the archer or something, so you want to get like essentially to a perch, to like a sniper's tower, so you just fly on up, and then you can shoot from up there, and then your next turn you can use your bonus action to bring like your wizard or something out of the fray as well by getting him to an area that's safe, so it can help protect you and your allies from just like miscellaneous things, because now you've moved to a better vantage point, so it's kind of nice. And you also get Telekinetic Thrust. When you deal damage to a target with your Psionic Strike, you can force the target to make a Strength saving throw against a DC of 8 plus your proficiency plus your intelligence modifier. If the save fails, you can knock the target prone or move it up to 10 feet in any direction horizontally. So this is just a free thing. This isn't a once per short or long rest without Psionic die. This doesn't take Psionic dies. This is if you use the Psionic Strike, which is something that does take one of your die. You can basically knock an enemy prone, which does mean that if you are, if you're using Psionic Strike, you basically should just be using this. And a lot of the times you should be knocking them prone, because, knocking an enemy prone is always kind of good. And if there is a chance to maybe push an enemy off a cliff or something, or into like a very hazardous situation, then knocking them 10 feet away horizontally can also be fairly helpful. Of course, if you are a ranged fighter, you probably don't want to be knocking them prone, because prone enemies you have disadvantage against enemies that are prone while using bows and arrows, using range attacks, just because of, they're a smaller target essentially, or they're a different shape than what you're used to, which is interesting. You'd think that you would have trained to be hitting prone targets, and if you're proficient enough to shoot a wolf, which is, not exactly the same size as a human, but in the exact same, design of what a human who's laying down would essentially be, you'd think that you wouldn't have disadvantage, but you do. So, but this is if you're being, in the melee time, then knocking them prone will give you advantage against them because they are prone. So, just something to keep in mind. Or if you want to, you see that your ally, your friendly barbarian might have just, run up to the guy to attack him, you knock the enemy prone, and then your barbarian can just go to town on them, splattering them like a watermelon during Gallagher Day. At 10th level, you get Guarded Mind. The psionic energy flowing through you has bolstered your mind. You have resistance to psychic damage. Moreover, if you start your turn Charmed or Frightened, you can expend a psionic energy die and end every effect on your subjugating you to those conditions. So the first part right here, this one it's helpful because now you have resistance to one of the least commonly resisted damage types in the game. There's also not a lot of things that really do psychic damage. Like, yeah, it'll make that mind flayers can't quite do as much to you, but at the same time, how often do you see a mind flayer or things that can do psychic damage? Not all that often, really, but it's nice to be able to, be resistant to it. And then this part is extremely strong, to where if you start your turn Charmed or Frightened, you can expend a psionic energy die to end it, and both of them potentially if you do have both of them active at the same time. The thing that's really strong about this is that it is if you start your turn Charmed or Frightened. It's not, at the end of your turn you can end it you can end it automatically using a die. This is at the start of your turn, you can just instantly end it, which means that you can still take your turn normally how you would want to, because you're no longer on one of these conditions. So it's actually really good that it just auto ends it. It's not, end of the turn, you can end it so you still lose your turn, or it's you just gain advantage on the roll to try to end it or something. No, it is just straight up start of your turn, end it, because you can use your psionic dice to ward it of all things. Actually, a pretty helpful ability. Next up, at 15th level, you get Bulwark of Force. You can shield yourself and others with Teleconnect Force. As a bonus action, you can choose creatures, which can include you, that you can see within 30 feet of you up to a number of creatures equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of 1. Each of the chosen creatures is protected by half cover for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. You can, once you use this as this bonus action, you can't do so again until you finish your long rest, unless you use a psionic energy die. So, getting to do this for free essentially, because some DMs love to have like three or four combats in one session or in one day, so you can have take a long rest. But if you're not a combat oriented campaign, and you can just do this from time to time, getting to essentially give your team for free half cover is very nice, because that now means that it's harder for you to be hit by ranged attacks and stuff, as you have half cover in a sense, or technically. So it actually is a very nice thing to just be able to bonus action, give your allies defense, and then next turn you can bonus action, get out of the way by flying to somewhere else, and then bonus action move an ally out of the way of harm or something. All pretty nice things. I mean, yes, they're all bonus actions to do, but they're all actually very nice things that you can be doing, and I'm sure that some of these you can be doing outside of combat. Of course, telekinesis and fly, but there's also nothing saying that you couldn't go, alright, we want to get into the fray with these enemies, use it just before combat, and then get into combat so that your first turn can be used to get yourself flying to an area after you've already given your allies half cover. So just kind of a neat little thing. And then at 18th level as the Capstone, you get Telekinetic Master. Your ability to move creatures and objects with your mind is matched by few. You can cast a telekinesis spell requiring no components, and your spellcasting ability for the spell is intelligence. On each of your turns, while you concentrate on the spell, including the turn when you cast it, you can make one attack with a weapon as a bonus action. Once you cast the spell with this feature, you can't do so until you finish a long rest, unless you expend a psionic energy die to cast it again. So the real strong thing is, yeah, you get telekinesis spell, but also while concentrating on the spell, you can make an attack as a bonus action. Is actually kind of good, because if you've already used your other things as your other bonus action things, you basically can, at this point, you can get a 4th attack, and then afterwards, once you get to here at 20th level, you can get a 5th attack on a turn if you don't already have something that can be needing your bonus action. But this is basically just allowing you to wail on enemies over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and just a million hits on enemies as a fighter who wants to be swinging their sword as much as you can. This is actually really nice to be able to do here, and something that you definitely can focus on, and would be a pretty nice addition in the end as the 18th level. Nothing over the top that's like you need to get it's like, shoot, never get to 18th level, so you don't get it, but it's also not like, oh, I got to 18th level and this is what I get. It's actually a pretty nice thing, a pretty good 15th level, a pretty good 10th level, not too bad on your 7th level things. They're all pretty good here as your 3rd level related things. All in all, it's not here, but if it was, it definitely would go somewhere up here, maybe above Arcane Archer, just because you get more psionic die. If you got like a lot of Arcane Archer, like their arcane die things for their trick shots, if you got like a pretty decent amount of them, so you can really be slinging them and not having to be worried about, oh great, now I don't have, I have all these options I can choose from, but I can only use like 2 of them per time. If you can use it like 6 times, 5 times, or something like that, then it's like, yeah, it's actually pretty helpful, because now I can really start kind of like loosely using them and not have to worry too much. So definitely would go a pretty decent stat up there, and definitely would be a fun one to play at some point, and I'm sure I'll try it out at some point. I haven't tried all of them. I have tried all of these. I haven't tried these 2, and I've played a samurai before, so I don't have the personal experience of playing the Roon Knight and the Psy Warrior, but I do have experience with all the other ones, and a lot of experience on all the other ones, actually. Next up, we'll start with the Roon Knight, who gets a bonus proficiency of Smith's Tools, and you learn to speak, read, and write Giant. So, nifty little thing that you gain an extra language, and the ability to be proficient with Smith Tools is nice. Nothing bad about getting that little like a bonus thing there. And then also you gain Rune Carver. You get 2 options at 3rd, something at 7th, something at 10th, and something at 15th. And what this does is it allows you to use magic runes to enhance your gear. You learn 2 runes of your choice from among the runes described below, and each time you gain a level in this class, you can replace one rune with a different one from this feature. When you reach certain levels in this class, you learn additional runes as shown in the table. 3rd level, you get 2, 7th 3, 10th 4, and 15th 5. The runes you can get, which, let's see, whenever you finish your long rest, you can touch a number of objects equal to the number of runes you know, and you inscribe a different rune onto each of the objects. To be eligible, an object must be a weapon, armor, shield, jewelry, or something you can wear or hold in your hand. Your rune remains on an object until you finish your long rest, and an object can bear only one of your runes at a time. So this kind of has a feel of the Artificer almost, in what their infusion, or not their, not the infusions, but their little thing that they get at, I think, second level, where they can kind of like touch it and just give it like a tiny little thing where it's like, oh, it can, you know, hold a message, have a sound, smell, and ominous like that, but for a more usable thing, more like actual action-related things, and not just as a like utility object. The following runes are available to you when you learn a rune. If a rune has a level requirement, you must be that level in this class to learn the rune. If a rune requires a saving throw, your rune magic save DC equals 8 plus proficiency plus constitution modifier. You get Cloud Rune. This rune emulates the deceptive magic used by some cloud giants. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on dexterity, sleight of hand checks, and charisma deception checks. In addition, when you are a creature you can see within 30 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your action to invoke the rune and choose a different creature within 30 feet of you other than the attacker. The chosen creature becomes the target of the attack using the same roll. This magic can transfer the attack's effects regardless of the attack's range. Once you invoke this rune, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. So you can basically not just negate an attack, but you can force the attack to then damage an enemy. So if your ally is getting hit by that natural 20, well, you can essentially, instead of your Grave Domain Cleric just negating the crit part, but still having the damage happen, you can basically say, no, that natural 20 that you just rolled, causing you to roll 2d12 times 2, is now do d12 times 2 on that guy over there. That is your ally, even if they aren't within range, which is kind of nice to see. And it is actually just by an attack roll. It is not saying that it has to be a weapon, which technically means that if an enemy uses something that, you know, not like a saving throw like Fireball, but they use a spell such as like Disintegration or something like that, that would be, you know, they have to roll to hit and it would then damage that way, you can actually make that hit an enemy instead, which is kind of cool. You also get a Fire Rune. This rune's magic channels the masterful craftsmanship of great smiths. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check that uses your proficiency with a tool. So this is something that you'd probably give to an artificer and make them just even better. Or if you're running a second fighter and that fighter is a gunslinger, you can actually give them double proficiency for them, because then anytime they misfire and have to use their tools to fix their gun, their proficiency bonus is doubled for you for fixing it. Or you can give it to a rogue who's going to use thieves' tools, who will then get a double it, which also means that if they have expertise in thieves' tools, they're quadrupling their proficiency bonus, which is a plus 12 early on and a plus 24 later on, which basically means that they're never going to fail at that point. So, in addition, when you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon, you can evoke the rune to summon Fiery Shackles. The target takes extra 2d6 fire damage and must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained for 1 minute. While restrained by the shackles, the target takes 2d6 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, banishing the shackles on a success. Once you invoke this rune, you can't do so until a short or long rest. So this is, you know, always helpful, because it's basically they instantly take 2d6 fire damage and they're guaranteed to take a second 2d6 fire damage if they do fail the saving throw, because they take the damage at the start of each of their turns and they make the saving throw at the end of each of their turns. So if they fail the saving throw, they're guaranteed to take a second set of 2d6 fire damage, and potentially longer and longer of just constant damage. And then next up, you get the Frost Rune. This rune's magic evokes the might of those who survive the wintry wilderness, such as frost giants. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on animal handling and intimidation checks. In addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action to increase your sturdiness. For 10 minutes, you gain a +2 to all ability checks and saving throws that use strength or constitution. Once you invoke this rune, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. So this one is kind of more one of those, you either use it just before you're about to go out and like, maybe start climbing stuff that has stuff that, like climbing for athletics or swimming for athletics, or if you're about to go into maybe combat or even a drinking challenge where you need to be making constitution saving throws somewhat often, then this is something that you kind of use just as everything is starting, rather than, right in the need of the moment, you go, alright, this is going to be happening for a pretty good amount of time, of 10 minutes, so you use it as it starts rather than just before it happens. So, a nifty little thing, not as strong as the other ones, giving the proficiency bonus doubling for tools is pretty good, and then getting to have deception checks and sleight of hand checks, getting advantage on them is extremely good. Having the intimidation check is good. Animal handling may not be used as much as other ones are, but it still is helpful. And then just a +2 to the ability checks is all right. I mean, anytime you can add a bonus for essentially free is good, but just a +2 is all right. Next, you get the Stone Rune. This rune's magic channels the judiciousness associated with stone giants. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on wisdom checks and have dark vision of a range of 120 feet. So this is definitely something that, if you're traveling with a human or any other class that may not have dark vision, you can grant them dark vision and also advantage on insight checks, which insight checks are fairly common, especially, well, as long as you know that you should be rolling for insight. If you ever do want to try to check for somebody deceiving you, don't be afraid to say that you want to roll for insight there. So, getting advantage on that one is very helpful. In addition, when a creature you can see ends its turn within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to invoke the rune and force the creature to make a wisdom saving throw. Unless the save succeeds, the creature is charmed for you by English, guys. The creature is charmed by you for 1 minute. While charmed in this way, the creature has a speed of 0 and it is incapacitated, descending into a dreamy stupor. The creature repeats the same throw at the end of each of its turn, ending the effect on a success. Once you invoke this rune, you can't do so until you finish a short or long rest. Now, the good thing about this one, it isn't just like the normal charmed condition. You're basically putting the enemy to sleep, and because they're incapacitated, there's special rules for enemies who are incapacitated, especially when it comes to melee attacks, because an incapacitated creature, which is usually a creature who's asleep or unconscious from being knocked to 0 hit points, melee attacks, or attacks within 5 feet of it, automatically crit when you hit them. So this means that when you hit the enemy, you automatically are going to crit them. And unlike other ones, other charmed conditions where it says, oh, if they are hit or, they are attacked, if they take damage, if they make a saving throw, they automatically snap out of it. They don't automatically snap out of it, which potentially means that you can invoke the rune, causing them to go into the sleepy condition, and then it's now your turn. You're, only having one attack at this point, but if you use this later on, you can potentially run up with 4 attacks and get 4 chances to crit the enemy. So, yeah, and you get this on a short or long rest. So it's a pretty good one, I would say. At 7th level or higher, you can choose the Hill Rune. This rune's magic bestows a resilience reminiscent of a hill giant. While wearing or carrying an object that bears this rune, you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, and you have resistance against poison damage. So, definitely not something that you should be giving to your dwarf, but it is something that if you know that you might be going up against something that has, poison-related things, like if you're going into a den of spiders or something, and you know that, there's a good chance that there's gonna have, poison conditions. Maybe you're about to fight a green dragon or something. Popping this bad boy is definitely a good idea. And, in addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action, getting resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage for 1 minute. Note, this does not specify that it is non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, which means even magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage is resisted. So that's actually a very powerful thing, and it'll last for 1 minute, which basically means that you can either do this at the start of combat, or once whoever has this on runs into the middle of the fray, they can activate it then, and then get the bonus from it, so they can try to maximize the time that this is going to be happening. So it's actually a pretty strong thing you can have there. So a pretty decent one here, being poison, is one of the most common one of the most common damages, and one of the most common conditions, outside of Charmed and Frightened being the most common. This is probably the 3rd most common, I would have to say. And then having resistance to the damage as well is pretty nice. And then your bonus action ability, your Invokement, is probably the strongest thing you could have, as these are the most common damage types in the game. And then also at 7th level or higher, you can have the Storm Rune. Using this rune, you can glimpse the future like a storm giant seer. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on intelligence arcana checks, and you can't be surprised as long as you aren't incapacitated. The arcana check, if you're giving this to a wizard who has a high arcana check, this is a pretty nice thing you can have there. And then you can't be surprised while you you're conscious. It's a pretty nice thing. So in addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action to enter a prophetic state for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Until the state ends, when you or another creature you can see within 60 feet of you makes an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, you can use your reaction to cause the roll to have advantage or disadvantage. Once you invoke this rune, you can't do so until you finish a short or long rest. So that's actually a pretty good thing there. The fact that you can, have the ability to give advantage and disadvantage out. It is, of course, using your reaction to do so, and you would have had to have activated this beforehand, which means that, if you're like a little bit later in the initiative order, you probably would have missed the first round of combat, but you'll still get to do it in the end. Of the ones here, what I recommend, Hill Rune when you can, Stone Rune, Fire Rune would definitely be the most common ones. Cloud Rune would also be. Of course, by the end, you get just about all of them can be put on, so it's kind of like an alright thing, as you'll get all except for one of them. I would personally, depending on what you need to be doing at the time, leaving off, Frost and Storm would probably be the two that you'd be swapping off. So, and do note that you can only have 2 of these at 2nd level, so by the time you get to 15th, that's when you can have all 5, but just starting with 2 runes. So at 3rd level, you also gain Giant Smite. A lot of things you can be getting throughout the class from this. 3rd level, you get Giant Smite. You have learned how to imbue yourself with the Might of Giants. As a bonus action, you magically gain the following benefits, which last for 1 minute. If you are smaller than large, you become large, along with anything you are wearing. If you elect the room to become large, your size doesn't change. You have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. Once on each of your turns, one of your attacks with a weapon or an unarmed strike can deal an extra d6 damage to a target. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you gain it back at a long rest. This is kind of similar to a Barbarian's Rage, where you're getting advantages to strength checks and saving throws, and then you're getting to do a little bit of extra damage. You get 1d6, which can potentially means that you can have a high of a 6 damage, which is more than what a Barbarian's Rage can do, but this is also only giving you one-time thing, not an every-time thing, like the Barbarian does, how every single hit will gain the damage. So that little, change there, and then you also become big. You become big. So it's also kind of funny to think that, you can be a small creature that becomes large. It isn't just you gain one size change, you just become large, which means that you can be big goblin, which is just a funny thought to see of a goblin going from tiny, 3-foot range into a, 10-foot tall goblin, just a funny thought in my head. At 7th level, you gain Runic Shield. You learn to invoke your rune magic to protect your allies. When another creature you can see within 60 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your action to force the attacker to re-roll the d20 and use the new roll. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, getting them all back at a long rest. So this is just something to make sure that it can potentially protect your allies. But do also be aware that technically this is saying that they have to use the new roll. So if the attacker rolls and they roll a d20, they roll a natural 20 on the second hit, well, you accidentally just had your ally get hit by a natural 20. So, be cautious with that. But this is definitely something that's nice if the enemy just rolled a natural 20 against them, because you can just potentially, you can negate the whole thing and potentially make them miss instead of hitting. So, at 10th level, you gain Great Stature. The magic of your runes permanently alters you. When you gain this feature, roll 3d4. You grow a number of inches in height equal to the roll. Moreover, the extra damage you deal with your Giant Smite feature increases to 1d8. This one is this part is kind of uh, whatever. I mean, it's kind of cool that you get to grow in height, but I mean, like, yeah, I guess at max you can grow a foot, and at minimum you grow 3 inches. It's kind of like, cool, you're a bit taller. And then this part is kind of nice that you now do a 1d8 instead of 1d6. So just a little bit of extra damage, where I'm sure is the actual, good part of it. At 15th level, you gain Master of Runes. You can evoke each rune you know from your Rune Carver feature twice rather than once, and you regain them when you finish a short or long rest. So just the ability to do, all the rune abilities twice instead of just once is kind of cool. And then you get Runic Juggernaut at 18th level. You learn how to amplify your rune power transformation. As a result, the extra damage you deal from the Giant Smite features increases to 1d10. Moreover, when you use that feature, your size can increase to huge, and while at that size, your reach increases by 5 feet. So this is a pretty good one. You now get 1d10 instead of 1d8, which was 1d6. So a bit more damage and a bit, higher, like better chance that you're rolling higher numbers. And then you also get to become huge, which increases your reach by 5. So far, another one of those. It's good to have it as a capstone. Nothing to be like, I need to get 18th level, but nothing that is like, this is what I'm getting at 18th level. All in all, the Roon Knight is definitely probably a little bit lower. Probably just, I would probably say is behind Eldritch Knight, because, Eldritch Knight is like, depending on what you choose as your spells, but what you're getting as an Eldritch Knight is actually pretty powerful, and these are all, are you going to be able to use the rune properly? Do you have a right rune for the right time? All these miscellaneous little things here and there. So, and lastly, we'll go over the Samurai. You get a bonus proficiency of either a language, or you can get a Samurai skill, which can be History, Insight, Performance, or Persuasion. Just gonna click on Insight because that's usually what I click on. You'll gain Fighting Spirit. Your intensity in battle can shield you and help you strike true. As a bonus action on your turn, you can give yourself advantage on weapon attack rolls until the end of your current turn. When you do so, you also gain 5 temporary hit points. The number of hit points increases when you reach certain levels in this class, 10 at 10 and 15 at 15. When you use this, you can use this feature 3 times, and you regain all when you finish a long rest. So getting the temporary hit points is nice, especially early on where, 5 can be a pretty decent amount of hit points to gain, because, this is the point where damage is not coming out to be like, oh, the enemy does 70 damage or something. So, this is the time where it's like, enemy does 7 damage, and it's like, ooh, I only take 2 damage because my temporary hit points. And then also giving yourself advantage on all attack rolls. This is just pretty good, and it's not saying advantage on a specific person, it is just advantage overall. So this is good early on, this is good later on, where you can be rolling 4 attacks that are all at advantage. Yeah, it's going to be really easy for you to be getting a crit at this point. At 7th level, you get Elegant Courtier. Your discipline and attention to detail allow you to excel in social situations. Whenever you make a persuasion check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. Your self-control also causes you to gain proficiency in wisdom saving throws. If you already have this proficiency, you instead gain proficiency in intelligence or charisma, your choice. So the top one is pretty nice because you might be trying to persuade from time to time. So you can gain a bonus to your wisdom. So, this is saying that you probably want to have a little bit more wisdom. So it'd be, strength or dex. Strength or dex, if you want to be like a very samurai-like, either one would be fine actually, because your sword can be the katana or something. So it can be, or I guess rapier or katana in a sense. So it's like, yep, you can have the dex base in there, but then you can also say, hey, I'm the samurai with a big ol' like claymore who is wearing like the full heavy armor to look more like like that style of samurai. So you can be a strength base in that situation. Constitution next, because you always want to be a hardy character when you're being a melee combatant, and then wisdom as your third most important. And then gaining an extra saving throw. This is always one of the best things you can have, is more proficiencies in saving throws, especially with wisdom, because wisdom is one of the like more common things. It's something that usually will be like kind of mind effects, causing causing you to become charmed, causing you to become frightened, trying to deal like psychic damage potentially, anything that might be to do with that. Your wisdom saving throw is now a bit higher in that case, because you're now proficient in it, and if you're already proficient in it because you might be proficient from maybe like your race or something, or if you took a feature that allows you to become proficient in wisdom saving throws, then you can now have intelligence or charisma. So it actually is very strong to have this right here. At 10th level, you gain Tireless Spirit. When you roll initiative and have no fighting spirit remaining, you get one back. So this isn't saying that this is at 10th level, you're getting one use back. Some of the other things are you're getting it back at like 15th or 18th level. You're getting this early on at 10th level, the ability to gain one back. So it's actually pretty nice to get it back that early on. I would have to say it is definitely better than getting it as like a 15th or an 18th level ability. But at 15th level, you're getting Rapid Strike. You learn to trade accuracy for swift strikes. If you take the attack action on your turn and have advantage on an attack roll against one of the targets, you can forego the advantage for that roll to make an additional weapon attack against that target. As part of the same action, you cannot do so more than once per turn. So you basically can have advantage because of your other ability, your main ability of this subclass, the fighting spirit stuff here. So you can forego the advantage on that specific enemy to gain an extra attack against that enemy. And then you can then basically get 2 attacks against them for that one action, and on top of all the other attacks you can do, of course. And then you can attack other people still with advantage. Of course, you have to be choosing from the start. It can't be like, oh, I take 3 of my 4 attacks at advantage, and then at the end, say, okay, I'm no longer having advantage to gain the extra attack. It has to be when you take the attack action, you're choosing to either have advantage or to not have advantage. If you have advantage, then you don't get the extra attack. If you don't have the advantage, then you gain an extra attack. So it's just a nice little thing that you can do, and it is probably pretty easy for you to be having advantage against enemies. As the Capstone, you get Strength Before Death. Your fighting spirit can delay the grasp of death. If you take damage that reduces you to 0 and doesn't kill you outright, you can use your action to delay falling unconscious, and you can immediately take an extra turn, interrupting the current turn. While you have 0 hit points during that extra turn, taking damage causes death saving throws, death saving throw failures as normal and through death saving throws. Throw failures can still kill you. When the extra turn ends, you fall unconscious and you still have 0 hit points. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So this is basically just allowing you to take a second turn, which allows you to potentially, kill the enemy before they can kill you. But also as a nifty thing, you basically go 0 hit points. Maybe you only drop to like -7 or something. As a fighter, you have the ability called Second Wind, which allows you to roll a d10 and add your fighter level. All the way at this point, at level 18, you'd be rolling a d10 plus 18 hit points. As long as you're not below, you're going to be rolling at minimum 19, at maximum 28, an average of, 23 or so. You're basically guaranteed that as long as you didn't go below, if, you went to, -22 hit points, then you're basically going to say, oh, you get hit, you go to -22 hit points. You can then, or actually, technically there is no negative hit points in 5e. So you actually, rather than falling unconscious, as long as you still have your Second Wind, you can basically take all of your extra hits and then just use Second Wind to bring yourself back up to 20 odd, minimum of 19 hit points, and then later on a minimum of 21 hit points, because 5e does not have negative damage, or negative health, unless the negative health would bring you to negative your max HP. Then that's outright kill. So you actually can just basically steal the turn, attack the enemy, potentially kill them, use a bonus action to then get yourself back up to a certain amount of hit points, and make sure that you don't die. So yeah, that's actually kind of great that you can do that, and a very strong thing to have as a 18th level Capstone. Everything is actually extremely good, and everything really adds on to nifty abilities, nifty areas. a little bit. I'd probably put it on the same level as the champion. They just play different aspects of gaining advantage for, certain attacks, or getting an extra attack if you have advantage, and, a lot of miscellaneous things here. And then compared to what the champion does, which is basically focusing on more crits, more, stronger abilities of just what the fighter is, not really adding to a new subclass itself, just making the fighter a better fighter, not a fighter into a specific. Like the samurai makes you a samurai fighter, the champion makes you a better fighter. If you understand what I'm saying there. But yeah, that does it for this video. That is the subclasses other than the Battlemaster, which I'll go over tomorrow at some point when I'm going over the fighter as a whole. So do look out for that video. Hopefully it'll come out tomorrow. It might come out Monday, as I explained last time I was doing these. So, but, do be on the lookout for the fighter overview and me to gossip about the Battlemaster for however long. This is my ranking. It goes Battlemaster and the Gunslinger, Champion, Samurai, Cavalier, Arcane Archer, Eldritch Knight. These two either don't exist or have their names changed to, potentially to the whatever I had just gone over, the Psi Knight and the Roon Knight. They might have just had their names changed potentially. I don't quite know. Do look forward to the overview and to next week's Monk. And then, plenty more videos to come out. As you can see, I still have Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard, which, boy oh boy, Wizard, you've got a lot to go over. Ha ha ha. Yeah, Wizard's got a lot of stuff, but I don't mind going over it all. But yeah, that does it for this video, and the fighter as a whole. Or not as a whole, but the fighter subclasses as a whole. If you guys did enjoy, then consider hitting the like button and commenting down below what you guys did enjoy, so that I may continue improving upon it to continue making the videos as well as I have been. If you guys didn't like the video, then go ahead and dislike it and comment down below what you didn't like so that I can improve upon it to make the videos better for y'all. If you guys want to know when I upload, then the best way to know is by subscribing. But that does it for this video. Until next time, bye guys.